Hello and welcome to TapeDeck Sessions with me, Josh Hayes, brought to you by TapeDeck. TapeDeck is the new online platform that connects casting directors with actors and creatives to send, receive, organize and view self-tapes in one easy-to-use platform. Thank you for joining us. Here on TapeDeck Sessions, we chat to some of the industry's most exciting actors, agents, casting directors and creatives. And we're really lucky with today's guest. She started her career as an actor after training at Mountview, and she graduated in 2016. On stage, she has starred in Mamma Mia, The Sound of Music, Our House, and on television, she's featured in Humans for Channel 4. However, she also works as a freelance casting associate, having worked alongside the Hubbards, Debbie O'Brien, and Harry Blumenau, to name but a few. So it is my pleasure to welcome to TapeDeck Sessions, Sophie Matthew. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you? That was such
Yeah.
a nice introduction. Thanks.
Oh, I'm glad you like it. That's great.
And yay for Tape Deck as well.
Thank you very much. Absolutely. So Sophie, thank you very, very much for joining us. So we ask every guest that we have on just to take us back to the beginning. How did you get involved in the industry?
I got involved in the industry. I suppose I was quite lucky. I firstly had a mum who worked in the industry. She worked in kind of TV and then she went into teaching. And I also have an older sister who's an actor. So I was quite fortunate that I kind of started learning about the industry as a whole when I was quite young. I was also really lucky. I went to a school that had that kind of celebrated the arts. And then, went and did my A-levels and then going to drama school, which obviously, I was absolutely over the moon. And as you said, went to Mountview, did 3 years, and then graduated and have been kind of navigating this weird and wonderful industry since.
Awesome. So what I was really keen to know then, because it's quite a rare thing to have someone who's an actor and then also works in casting. Tell us how that transition came about.
In all honesty, I fell into it. It was very much, I think it was right place, right time in a lot of ways. I was in third year and I just started auditioning. And I auditioned for Debbie O'Brien, as you said, for quite a well-known show, and did well in the process, but didn't end up getting the job. And oh my God, I was gutted. It was obviously felt like the end of the world because it was one of the first kind of experiences I'd had of that. And she got me back in a couple of times, and at the time Harry Blumenau was her assistant, but obviously now he's casting director. And yeah, they kind of called me in for a couple of things, and some of them I really did not do well in as well. And then one day after one of my auditions for them, she pulled me aside and said, can I speak to you around the corner in the hallway? And I thought, oh God, she's going to say like, you need to just give up now. And she didn't. She said, we're looking for a new assistant. Would you want to be it? And obviously I was just like, sorry, what? And I think I knew what a casting director was, but I didn't necessarily understand the other roles involved, like assistants and associates and all of that. And yeah, I started, I think it was like 1 week later. And yeah, have kind of been working on and off for them for the last 8 years, which is pretty lovely. So they've taught me a lot. So yeah, I kind of owe it to them for, I don't know, seeing whatever it was they saw in me and kind of taking a punt.
Nice. And so, I mean, talk about some of the sort of similarities and the differences between the two jobs that they must require such different skills.
They do require different skills in that I suppose you have to be able to like switch between the two. Yeah, the different brains. There's obviously a lot more kind of the admin side of things in casting as well as the creativity. But I think, and I'm lucky I've worked for a kind of nice mixture of casting directors now, some of whom love employing actors as assistants, because, and I think it's a great thing. I mean, we're quite loyal people. We work very hard. Like every actor just wants to please, don't they? So, you do like, and you get so involved in things, but I think also you understand that side of it. You understand what it's like to be an actor in a room. And that's one of the things I love about being involved in a process where I can be in the room, because if especially if I'm reading with someone, like you know exactly how they feel. So it's nice being able to like chat to someone outside of the room, bring them in, you know. I think that is actually, there's quite a lot of similarities that maybe people don't always understand. But at the same time, there's also a lot of casting directors that wouldn't want to employ actors because of the availability and, you know, not always, yeah, you know, all those reasons. But yeah, I think there's actually more similarities than one might assume.
And so what about you? What about those differences then?
I think you have to be able to step away from it. As an actor, you want to be able to go home at the end of the night or at the end of the day of shooting or whatever it is you're doing and switch off, of course. But you also want to be, when you're there, you want to be really immersed in it. As a casting associate assistant director, I think you also have to be able to like remove the emotion from it and look at it in a more sometimes strategic way, sometimes a slightly more brutal way. You know, it's not always going to be the best person for the job that gets it. There's so many other things that come into it. I think yeah, you have to be able to have a little bit more of like a outwardly look as one of the creatives as opposed to being one of the actors, if that makes sense.
It makes absolute sense, totally. And so then conversely, thinking from an actor's head, has it changed how you've been as an actor working in casting?
Wait, as how I am as an, yeah, like completely. I'm so like, I feel firstly really grateful to have been able to do it. And I feel like if any actors ever get the opportunity to be a runner, be a reader, be an assistant, whatever it is, I would say always do it, because obviously it's fascinating to be that side of the table. But I also think for me, one of the biggest things I've taken from it is, as I said, like the classic jigsaw that everyone always hears about. Like, it really is a thing. And I think as an actor, you sometimes just think like, oh, that's such a rubbish excuse for why I didn't get a job or why I couldn't get seen or why I didn't get a recall. And I think having been in the rooms, it's such a thing. There is so much that is actually out of your control, and it can be down to the tiniest, most random things. I've been in rooms or I've seen tapes of people that I just think, God, they're so phenomenal that this person has to get the job, and they don't. And sometimes they don't even get a recall. And it's not that they're not brilliant and super skilled or a really lovely person. They're just so many other things that come into it. And I think seeing that again and again and again, it doesn't necessarily make me less nervous, because I think nerves are, natural and sometimes a good thing. And it doesn't necessarily make me less gutted if I don't get a job. But I think it just gives me a little bit more of the understanding. And I think now have much more of an attitude of, I'm just going to go in and I'm just hoping that I will just do the absolute best I can do on that day, and everything else is pretty much out of my control, and trying not to like second guess, think like, oh, what do I think they want? Like, actually do your best, make your choices, prepare as much as you can, and outside of that, there actually is very little you can do, which is quite freeing in a way.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of strength in that. Bryan Cranston talks about it. I think he did an interview with BAFTA, and he talks about that, about the moment when he realized that his job is not to get the job. His job is to present his work to the best of his ability. And if he's right for that role, or if he fits, or if he's what they're looking for, he might get it. And if he's not, well, at least he's given his best performance. He's done his job, and he can hold his head high and go home with dignity and with strength. And I think that's a really, really vital thing for actors to cling on to, because a lot of actors, they have no control over the process. And yeah, I think that's a really, really important thing for actors to learn.
I think like what you said of like dignity as well. you know, it's a really hard thing to go in and audition. You know, and you are like, you feel very naked, don't you? And it's quite exposing. And especially if you're not having your best day, like it can be really, it can really knock you. And I think if you can find a way, if you can find a mindset that helps you maintain that dignity, you know, a lot of it does come from you as well, because you don't know who you're going to meet in a room. You don't know what their reactions are going to be. And yeah, you have to like try and get yourself to a comfortable, calm place where you can still be like proud of yourself, like you say, that even after auditions, not only if you get the job.
Yeah, absolutely. So that leads us quite nicely on to what is it that you look for from actors when they're taping for something or when they're in the room? What is it you look for, or what are the things you really enjoy to see?
The things I really enjoy to see, firstly, obviously it's slightly different if you're taping, but if you're in a room, then I think, like, it sounds probably a bit silly to say, but people's energy, like, you really, really can pick up on a lot about an actor from their energy when they're waiting outside. Firstly, like, you'd be surprised how many actors can be super rude to either like the people working in the studios, or, and sometimes it comes out of nerves, don't get me wrong, but you know, but like just having a like friendly and open energy in a room, I think goes a really, really, really long way. Um, Obviously, preparation is a big one. I think it's, and some casting directors might completely agree with me. So, you know, it's just my opinion. I don't think that you always have to be completely off book. I don't think that that is necessarily, you know, I think it's great if you can be, but life happens. People have other responsibilities. But I think if you can also tell when someone just hasn't really bothered to prepare versus like someone who's clearly prepared and they forget their lines. Like that's such a human thing to do. And actually, if you forget a line or a lyric, like I always say to people, like it's really not as big a deal as it feels. It feels awful to a panel. Like it's honestly, if you can carry on, it's like it's you don't even remember half the time. But yeah, I think like obviously being as prepared as you can. But my main one is also just having the ability to like listen and adapt. And it's really hard. I know what it's like when you get, I've had auditions where you go in and you lose like all ability to converse, and people are saying things to you and it's literally going in one ear out the other, because again, like nerves and adrenaline, and that's very human. But yeah, I think being able to work with the people in the room, because as cliche as it is to say, they always want you to do well. There is never, ever, ever, I've never seen a room where they don't want you to do well, because they need you to do well.
Yeah,
You know. Yeah.
absolutely. And then, so for you as a casting director, is there anything that you is a real no-no, or something that you really hate to see that actors do, or if you could sort of get actors to stop doing this one thing, is there anything? Or
Uh I think, well, like I said, never be rude to the assistant.
yes, you did say
Ever.
that. Yeah.
But also it's tricky because it's not, I think actors should absolutely be really confident in the value of themselves. And I don't think that that's a bad quality to have. I think it's a really good quality to have. Because also, yeah, no, I won't go into that. But on the flip side, someone who comes into a room and their attitude is a little bit like, I'm kind of above this, it does really read. And that sounds
Yeah.
like probably a harsh thing to say, but like, for example, this isn't a bad example, this is a nice example. I was working in one of the studios I work at, and very, very well-known actor came in who you'd see like all over the telly at the moment, and he's been in films and he's been on stage, and immediately recognizable and very, very skilled. And I was just sat chatting to him before he went into the room, and he was saying how kind of nervous he was to be doing a job that he was currently doing. And he started asking me for my thoughts, and I was so like, what, like, you are asking me, like, you know, which, and I was just really like struck by how kind of honest he was, and I suppose humble as well, but in
Yes, it sounds quite vulnerable, actually.
yeah, and I thought it was like just a really, I don't know, it was also quite nice to hear. I'm going off completely off topic now, so I'm very sorry.
No, it's
It was also
absolutely fine.
like, it just struck me that kind of no matter how successful you are or what age you are or how famous you are, like, you can still have all the same worries or vulnerabilities or like passions, and you know, and I just thought if he can come in there and be so honest and open, which obviously was like very kind of him to be like that with me, then I kind of was like, there's no reason why anyone can go into any room and not at least just be like nice. And I think grateful to be there is maybe the wrong phrase, because I think, yeah, I think actors are told to be grateful a lot for doing their job, but I think to be open, yeah, and I do, yeah, you can really see energies that are closed when they come in, and immediately it's hard not to go, oh, to that person.
Yeah. And
That was
so,
a very long answer. I'm very
no,
sorry.
it was a brilliant answer. It was absolutely brilliant. Nothing wrong with that answer at all. It was amazing. But I'm really curious actually to find out. Obviously, a lot of people talk about, you know, a singer's process or an actor's process. But do you have a particular process or a way of approaching a job from a casting point of view?
It really varies. Firstly, it really varies on the casting director, because yeah, in terms of like my role, how involved I am or I'm not, and obviously, like, I've done quite a lot of musical theatre casting, some play casting, some film casting, and more recently, much more like commercial casting, and so obviously they're all very, very different. Oh, that's a really hard question. I think,
Well, I think, for example, I know some casting directors, to give you a sort of what I'm going for here, some casting directors like to put the net far and wide and see what comes back, because there might be something completely unexpected,
yeah,
someone amazing who we didn't think that would be right, but they're fantastic. And then I know of other casting directors who go, no, this is what we want, so really specific, and I know 6 actors that can give that to us.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean? I
yeah,
think I'm
completely.
just really curious about the process of how you approach going, right, let's cast this.
I think I would always try and, you know, search as far and as wide as you possibly can. I think if there are real specifics for roles, then that will obviously narrow things down, and that in itself can also be really exciting, because you know, the more specific it gets, sometimes the harder it gets, so that's kind of more of a challenge. But I think I would always try and have a mixture of people who are experienced and maybe people who have less experience, or people who aren't as well known, or, you know, I think there's nothing more exciting than having a day of auditions with a real mixture of people, because, you know, like you say, you might sort of, someone might come into your room that you don't really know, and they might absolutely blow you away, and it's like, thank god we like got that person in, because like, what a shame it would have been to have never seen them for it.
Yeah.
But like I say, it also depends how much time you have as well. Like, sometimes, you know, casting directors don't always have the luxury of time, and often they really don't. Like, things happen, the turnover is sometimes really fast, like, probably I'd say much faster than most actors would probably realize. Not, you know, not through any fault of their own, but you don't always have the time of luxury, so it's nice when you get on a project where you do, and you can really explore.
And is that what would you say, that sort of time element, is that one of the greatest challenges that you face as a casting director?
I would say so, yeah. from what I've seen and from kind of the teams I've been in. And like that doesn't have to be a negative, but yeah, time is tricky sometimes. You know, if you've got like 24 hours notice or
Wow.
48 hours notice to run a day of auditions, which in something like the commercial world is very, very normal. Yeah, then that can be tricky.
And I mean, there's been an awful lot made recently in the recent sort of past 5 years about mental health for actors, but what's lacking from that discussion is actually that goes both ways. That must put an incredible strain on, like, what about the mental health of casting directors, their associates, assistants? That must be really hard.
Yeah, to be honest, I think that's probably the first time I've ever kind of, you know, anyone's ever either asked that or raised that. I think the mental health support within the acting industry is so important, and I don't think there's enough of it yet. I think, you know, workplaces are getting better with it, but I'd love to see more. But yeah, like a lot of casting directors I know, or, you know, have kind of come into contact with over the years, or maybe even worked for over the years, they work all the time, you know, and they really, like, they are such passionate people about their jobs, as are most people in the industry. But yeah, it's quite an intense job. It is an intense job. And sometimes you work with amazing people, sometimes you work with quite difficult people, or, you know, teams that present different. Wow.
Oh, we lost you a little bit
Oh
there. I
no,
think
sorry.
I don't know. It's absolutely. It's just the nature of Wi-Fi. I think we just lost the end of it, but we've got you back now, so that's good.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm curious to sort of push that a little bit more about if we could do more for casting directors in terms of helping them. I mean, to be honest, that's one of the reasons why we made TapeDeck, was we wanted to say, right, well, we've got this situation with self-tapes that became incredibly prevalent after COVID. How do we make the experience and the process of self-taping more enjoyable for actors and casting directors and creatives? And I'm really curious to know if you could do something, or if you could call for the change of something, what would help?
First,
Or say
I think,
again.
like, completely to go with what you're saying about tape deck technology, there is, you know, and it's like my Wi-Fi just cut out. Sometimes it's just the nature of the world we live in, isn't it? The technological world we live in. But there is nothing more stressful than when you've got a deadline and something goes wrong, or a website goes down, or you can't get, you know, tapes over to the team, or things like that. That is, I would say, the number one cause of stress in the casting industry. What else? God, it's a really hard question.
Yeah, I've sort of sprung that on you, really. It just sort of
No,
it came
it's
up.
such a good question. It's such a good question. I think if there was a bit more recognition for the work that casting directors do, I think that overall there would be more celebration of the work they do and their teams, and also probably a little bit more respect.
Absolutely.
Because yeah, I think, and like, I, you know, when I was at drama school and I had wonderful training, but I didn't really come out of it knowing much about casting directors. And that's, you know, that's nothing to do with the training I had, that it did or didn't do anything. But I think in general, there is a lack of knowledge about that side of the industry. It doesn't get recognized. I mean, it's just started to get recognized in things like award ceremonies. Not that they are the be all and end all, but I think, yeah, I don't think there's enough recognition for the hard work that goes into it. And I think, yeah, that does take its toll as well, because people feel, or could feel, underappreciated.
So moving on then, obviously the industry has changed an awful lot, particularly since COVID, since the writer strikes recently. How have you seen the industry change, and what do you think the future holds for the industry?
I think Look, if we're all being completely honest, and I don't want to be like a negative Nancy, but it's been really hard. It's been really
Mm,
hard, having a pandemic, and then I completely support the strikes. But of course, things like that do take its toll, don't they? And it it's you can see that it has had a huge effect. There are fewer jobs, there are fewer projects being commissioned, there's less money. The people with the money are much less willing to take the risks, especially on smaller projects, on new writing. It also, particularly from what I've seen, particularly in theatre, you're looking more and more and more at people with names, or people who are really well known, or people who can get bums on seats, which I think is needed to a certain extent. But I think most people I know are having a tough time and have done in the last few years. So I would also say, like, anyone who feels like, oh, I'm not getting seen for anything, like, everyone is in the same boat. They really are.
mm,
I'd say some positives to come out of it are self-taping. I personally love being in a room, but you don't always have that luxury. And I think the you know the pandemic brought on a lot more taping, and it's made it so much more accessible to people, especially people who don't necessarily live in London. Not that all castings go on in London, but I think it's made the lives of the casting directors, it means that they can see way more people, especially if you have international teams, being able to send however many self-tapes internationally and have those people sit and make their selects and set up Zoom auditions if someone's unavailable. And, I do think that it has made a lot of things more accessible. I would also say that the pandemic and the strikes, and kind of just, generally how things have been, I think it has really shone a light on mental health, amongst some other really important subjects. And I think I would like to think that things will keep progressing forward. And I think the industry as a whole, I think it will take a little bit longer for it all to, I don't know, will it ever go back to what it was? But that doesn't mean that we can't go in different directions. I think that, if people can hold out, then I think, there will be more stuff made. I think we're still in quite a tricky time at the moment.
yeah, definitely. And what do you think? What do you hope for the future?
I hope that there will be more new projects being commissioned. And I don't necessarily just mean like young writers or young directors or young actors, like people of all ages and of all demographics. But I hope that the people with the money will put their faith in those people a little bit more again. I'd like to see the government give more funding as well.
Well, they can't give any less.
Exactly. And I hope that people can be put into the safe spaces that allows them to also, like, bring everything that everyone has experienced in the last few years and the emotions and the vulnerability that comes with that. I hope that more spaces are created to allow people to share that as well. And it not just be like the same people or the same faces and everything.
Okay, so Sophie, at this point in the chat, we like to ask our guests some quick fire questions.
Okay. I'm already sweating.
Okay, so nice and easy one to start. 3 things you love about your job.
3 things I love about the job: the people, the emotions, and being able to see the whole of a casting process from the very, very beginning to the final product.
Nice, great answer. Okay, this is a bit of a broad one. If you could cast any play, musical, or film, what would it be and who would you cast?
Can I say 2 things? Sorry, I know it's quick fire.
You definitely can say
I
2
would
things.
either do This Is England the play, or I would do Prima Facie the film.
And who would you cast in both of those things?
Jodie Comer would have to be in both. If you're doing This Is England, though, I think you have to have a lot of the original cast and like throw Jodie Comer in as well. I also really like Adil Akhtar as well. I think he could. Can we put him in Prima Facie? Maybe, I don't know.
Why not?
Why not?
A deal. If you're watching, let us know. Are you up for it? Okay, so Desert Island, you're allowed to bring one play, one film, and one musical. What are you taking with you?
Okay, I'm going to say Prima Facie as well. Yeah, I know that's a bit of a cop out, but I'm panicking. My
It gives you
film
time
would,
to cast it as well on the island. You've got that. You've got
yeah,
the time
that's true.
to. You
Yeah,
know.
I need to really delve even deeper into it. That would be my play. My film would be The Devil Wears Prada because I need light relief from the really heavy play, and my musical would, yeah, it's going to have to be Hamilton. I'm a sucker for Hamilton.
Great choices. Fantastic choices. Okay, and give us an actor and a casting director who you think we should be looking out for in the next year or two.
Actor, I'm going to say Adam Young.
Okay, tell us about Adam.
Adam has already done some amazing screen and stage. I actually met Adam at Mount View, and he is, yeah, I'd say he's like a phenomenal actor. Also Symbia Candice, sorry, I'm doing two again.
So tell us the name of the second person.
Symbia Candice.
Okay, cool.
Already a star, but will continue to be a star, I believe. And it's just like the nicest human ever.
Oh, that's lovely. Okay, you can have two, yeah. And what about a casting director whose work you think we should all be looking out for? Let's give some recognition.
Okay, I'm gonna say a couple that I've kind of been working for a little bit recently. Anna Kennedy and Carmel Cochran, both incredibly established, incredible. Like, you know, it's not that I'm the first to say it at all, but like I think they cast some really incredible stuff, and I think that they also really, you know, that most casting directors I've worked for, but if they like you, they will really try and get you a job. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. My wife is her all-time favorite is Anna Kennedy.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
that's so lovely. Yeah, you know, like people that are really like rooting for you.
Yeah.
And yeah. Also, Lottie Hines, as an actor, I've auditioned for Lottie Hines for the first time recently, and it was just the most like lovely like experience ever. Again, not that I'm, you know, obviously all of these people have cast some incredible things and are like, yeah, doing amazing in their careers. So it's not that I'm introducing new unknowns, but just people that, yeah, I think like if you had the opportunity to work with them in any capacity, then I think, yeah, it would be a really great thing.
Wicked. Well, Sophie Matthew, thank you very, very much for joining us on TapeDeck Sessions.
No, thank you so much. It's been so lovely. Very honoured.